Hello and welcome to Leading with Women by EgoMonk. Joining us today is Anushka Kalro. She's a visual artist and brand designer with her own venture Gunpowder and Ghee. Her art and designs attempt to blend elements of the Indian heritage and folklore into a minimalistic output. With the aim of making heritage consumable, she uses monochrome ink, lines, and patterns as her tool of expression. She has previously worked with AirAsia to celebrate their nationwide expansion. Hello, Anushka, and thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this series.
Hi Rahi, thanks for having me.
So, Anushka, I went through your designs, and I have to say, this certainly holds such a lot of appeal. But what comes through and very glaringly comes through is it's all in monochrome. And in a lot of interviews, you've actually specified how you like going monochrome. So, as a visual artist, why did monochrome appeal to you?
Okay, so my journey with art began really early, probably when I was 4 or 5. And somewhere around the fourth standard, my art teacher gave me a black gel pen. Now, normally they don't give kids pens until the fifth or the sixth standard. You pretty much work in pencil and crayon. But my art teacher at school realized that all I could see around me was line, whether it was nature in the forest that I was growing up in school, or the kind of still life studies I did at home. I was always drawing in line. So she gave me a black pen very early. And I don't know if it's a folly or, just something that I can say that I intuitively gravitated towards. It just became my language, just drawing in line in black. And I'm still very true to that black white aesthetic because I feel like my inspiration is very cluttered. It's busy Indian tropical nature or architecture, and all of that has so much language and so much color, and I just wanted to sort of find the simplest language to communicate the same thing, which is why everything I do is sort of line representation of what I see in color but in black and white. Yeah, so that's me and monochrome.
Okay, I'm guessing you're thanking that teacher every day you work.
Yep, she gets pictures of my new work every time I do something till today.
Okay, that's nice. Um, so you have worked with customers ranging from large corporates like the project you did with AirAsia. Then you have solo entrepreneurs. Then you have special guests. So what are the kind of tweaks that you do to make sure that you succeed in both these client relationships?
Okay, so I guess the way that you need to look at it is that there's me work and there's them work. As an artist, you get commissioned sometimes you're doing things for yourself. And what's common in both of them is asking deeper questions. So for me, whether I'm working with a big client or a small client, or it's a single person commission, or it's a restaurant, my question to them, they kind of tend to have a brief in their head, because there's so much information available to them on Pinterest and on, Instagram. There's so much that they've got visually already in their head. But then when they come to someone like me, my questions to them are always emotional, which is how do you want someone to feel with your idea? So with AirAsia, for instance, they were talking about like, okay, we've kind of become this company that's now in so many different cities in India, and we want to celebrate that milestone. And so what really like sort of the understanding that came from several conversations was that they wanted actually for their staff to feel proud of the fact that they were now as much an Indian airline as they were a South Asian airline. So to sort of identify that emotion took some questioning, and then that became the narrative, which is how do we bring pride into the conversation. So a lot of elements of pride were crowdsourced from the staff of the airline itself, which is like, what are the monuments that sort of appeal to you? What are the moments that appeal to you? And that became the narrative there. Similarly, now, for instance, I'm working with a tarot card reader on a commission for her. And she said that there were certain elements of the tarot card that were important that she wanted to include. And she kind of wrote intuitively, emotionally about what particular part of the tarot card she wanted commissioned that really appealed to her. So it's always about like listening with empathy. And that helps you succeed, is if you're really listening for the emotional side of things, because art itself is so emotional. So, I
So
mean,
just a clinical
if that
brief
helps.
won't do. You have to connect on an emotional level to understand what's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, if you leave it up to somebody to explain how they're feeling, they'll edit themselves so many times. So you have to ask those deeper questions. You have to sort of
Okay.
say, I'm going to stretch beyond my, me time and do this for them, because otherwise you won't connect with what they're saying either. So as an artist, that's really important, right? It's like, am I connected to this person's vision, to their emotion? So that's really my sort of two bits on that.
It's actually very heartwarming to hear that you are currently working on a project, because out of all the experiences and so many creative artists we talk to, we hear such a lot of stories of hardship during the pandemic, and the creative economy was one of the hardest to be hit. So, how did you navigate it?
Okay, so I think for me, this year actually has been financially the most difficult year for me.
Okay.
And the good that's come out of it is that I had some time. And so, because I had time, I realized that I wanted to use that time to give back. And I said I was going to do, commissions for people in exchange for donations directly to craft organizations that didn't have money this year, that had COVID patients that needed help. And so what I did was I used my social media as a space to sort of say, you contribute to anybody and I will host a workshop. Contribute to a piece of art and I will give it to you. And all of that money will go to so and so organization. So because of that, a lot of people sort of responded to what I was doing intuitively and emotionally and said, Ki, now that you've done this and your work is sort of out there, and because I was doing that so actively and promoting my work to raise funds for someone else, this commission kind of just landed in my lap at that time, where this tarot reader was like, okay, but I want something for me, and how much will it cost? So that sort of became a different conversation, where because I had raised a sufficient amount of money for all these people and I was putting in all my time to do that, the visibility earned me some work. And I know that that's not a sustainable strategy for a lot of people, but it's just what happened in this particular case.
So, Anushka, tell me, as an emerging artist, how do you actually approach pricing and value? And how have you gone about raising these price points over time?
Okay, so this one, I feel like a lot of people assert their value basis the feedback they get from their peers who are also struggling. And for a long time, I made that mistake too. But a couple of years ago, what I did was I started to speak specifically to people that had been in the curation space in the art world. And whether it was like my friend who now manages my PR entirely, or, going on to a women's entrepreneur network called Leap Club and saying, hey, does anybody own a gallery? Does anybody, run a sort of studio space? And can they talk to me about my work? And so it was a lot of like putting yourself out there very consciously from a business strategic perspective. So I didn't assert my prices myself. I got a gallery owner to value it and then I put up my prices. Because I feel like the thing is, we're all so self critical. And so, you'll be like, aise hi le lo, take it for this much. And you don't know how much your work is worth because you're comparing yourself to other people that are starting in the journey with you. And so just to sort of find that third person perspective is really, really helpful. And I 100% recommend it to everybody that is self critical like me. So, yeah.
And are there any strategies in which you slowly raise the price point?
So yes, so a lot of it is kind of more how you break your work down. A lot of my pieces are not connected to each other, so those sell basis the scale of work, the amount of effort, and then there are some which belong to a collection. So collections, typically your gallery will value the entire series for you and then help you with how you kind of position each artwork within that series. So there are two ways that you do that, and depending on whether it belongs to a series or an individual piece, you can kind of assert time and effort for the individual work and then understand, okay, this is going to take more effort, so I can increase the price. This is larger, so I can increase the price. And then on the other hand, depending on the value of the collection, where, are people buying it? Are they interested in it? What is the gallery able to do for you in terms of PR? And then you kind of jump that bandwagon. So you have to always have your eyes on both of these verticals if you're doing art as something commercial.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about third party organizations, what role did Shopify or other creator payment platforms actually play in helping you further your venture?
Okay, so that's a great question. I feel like a lot of people go one of two ways. Either they open their own print shop, which is actually a very sort of like, I want all the profits for myself approach, or you partner with an existing platform that curates and sells art specifically. So we have quite a few of those in India now, quite a few that are in the boutique space. Art and Found is one of them, and Artemist is another. Calcutta Art Gallery is a third. So they basically they're like large scale print shops that work with younger artists, specifically illustrators, to do more commercial work. Now, I realized very quickly that that's not where I belonged. So I had to educate myself about why Shopify was right for me, because I wanted to be able to do something as small or as big as I'd like. So Shopify allowed me the option to sort of say, okay, I sort of will only sell 3 pieces, 3 prints of each original artwork. And I will control who that goes to. And, so my website is very by invitation only. It's people who are my known and dear ones becoming my voice to amplify the sort of work I do. Everything I do is kind of collector's edition. I don't want too many people to have prints and prints of my work, because then it just sort of loses its specialness to me. And I know that sounds selfish, but that's really where it came from. And so Shopify really helped me control how I do inventory, invoicing. It's been a really good learning journey for sure. So if someone is an independent artist and they want to be able to control quantity then and quality, then I'd suggest that they sort of go to one of the e-commerce platforms and build their own shop. I think it's just really a good journey in understanding money and
So
art
it helps
together.
overall.
Yeah, it definitely helps you understand money and art, and sort of how do you marry the two. So,
Okay. So, Anushka, we spoke about how you manage your supply, how third party organizations are helping you, how you're budgeting, how you're valuing your art. But what about the other side? How can new artists actually manage and grow their audiences?
okay, so a large part of the way that I work is I'm very social media averse. So I work entirely by word of mouth. So whether it's for my brand studio, which is kind of dealing with branding, identity design, or the art stuff, the first step actually is to identify and define the voice that's sort of true to you. In my case, I'm unapologetically Indian. I love the excess of everything around me, the sort of maximalist architecture, craft, and stuff like that, and kind of distilling that is into something consumable and contemporary. So articulating your voice and then finding channels where it works best. So the website that I'm currently, sort of marketing through is entirely by word of mouth, by the community that I have. And now I'm slowly sort of saying, okay, maybe I need to open this to wider audiences on social media platforms. So that has become, again, where I don't sort of do this from a business perspective, but I'm like, how do I want to look and sound and feel online? So it's really about like, can I assert a clear voice, something that I'm known for, something that's true to me, something that doesn't feel like work when I do it. And the minute you sort of do that, I feel like it just becomes easier to say, okay, now I have to put up a Facebook post, and you already know how you sound and you already know how you feel, though Facebook may not be the medium that you like the most. So just sort of like that, starting with like, what is my clear creative voice? And then how you translate that can come intuitively to you, because people are listening everywhere, literally. So I feel like that's important. Is also, then the other thing is knowing when to ask for help. A lot of people sort of start as solopreneurs, they sort of say, I'm going to go it alone, I'm going to be a freelancer. And that does two things. It sort of cuts you off from people that can support you, and also people that can challenge the way that you work. So it's always nice to sort of have a side gig that keeps you in touch with clients, keeps you in touch with other creative people, because their challenges and helping them problem solve can sometimes help you answer more difficult questions about how to do your thing as well. So I definitely recommend not always just doing one thing, and kind of saying, is there a deeper community that's on this journey too? and then you can just reach out and sort of support each other, as opposed to going it alone.
So, there are so many insights that you have given for new artists to follow. In your line of work, what have you seen new artists usually getting wrong when they're starting their journey?
Okay, so I'm guilty of this myself, which is the first thing people do when they decide that they want to be artists who are looked at and bought is that they say, I'm going to go onto social media. And then the first thing they do is that they follow 350 other artists. And the thing that happens when you do that is your immediate thing is, oh my God, there's so many people here who are better than me.
You go from 0 to 100 and then you get lost.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with how you see yourself in life in general. You'll just sort of be like, I now have to be in this rat race, and that is really, really overwhelming. So I guess the first big mistake is putting yourself out there before you have decided what you want to say. And that sort of stems back to my previous question, which is like, it's nice when you have a body of work behind you, something that you feel proud of without anybody else seeing it. And even if it's not proud, it's just sort of like gratified that I have completed this and I have done this monstrous thing. And, I feel like now I'm ready to share. And the minute you're ready to share, then you sort of stop being critical of like, oh, this person is zentangling and they're doing it better than me. Oh, this person is doing color so much better than me. And it sort of stops being about all of that comparison when it's complete and it's done. So I think it's also about timing. It's like, are you ready to really be there? Are you ready to put yourself out there? And only if you really feel like you can do that free of comparison, that's when you should do it. Because if you're going to be sort of taken in by your own insecurities, and I sort of went too early on social media. So I was just sharing work that I thought was quirky and would reach a particular kind of audience until maybe 2 years ago. And then I just said, I'm more worried about hashtags than I'm worried about if my work is getting better. And that really sort of calibrated how I was looking at myself. And that's something every artist should do is, am I doing this for the double taps on my Instagram feed, or am I doing this because I really like it? And that sort of really helped me.
Okay, so as a final question, I think for a creative person, this actually often I've heard that this becomes a very challenging obstacle to overcome. Have you ever grappled with imposter syndrome? And if you have, what are some effective strategies to manage it?
Okay, so I think imposter syndrome is something everyone in every field faces. So I have people who I'm doing branding for who are, running a tech company, and they're like, we want to be where X is today. And it's not about then, this is what I want to do. It becomes like, I want to be, like for a tech company, I want to go from 0 to this much in 2 years because so-and-so big tech company that suddenly got it funding has sort of reached there. And similarly, artists also feel like, I want to be the next Shiloh, I want to be the next Alicia Souza with my own product shop, and the thing is that your intention is to be like someone else. It's not to actually make something. And for me, I think I'm really selfish with my journey with art, like until recently, I didn't want to share it with anybody. And if I shared it, the stuff that I shared was not the stuff that I actually cared about. So it just became that I want people to know that I do art because it helps my branding business. But until recently, I sort of didn't say, this is who I really am, and now I'm okay to put it out there. So initially, I did feel like, it's going to take me a really long time to get where X or Y is. But then I realized that's maybe not where I want to be also, like I have so many diverse interests, and I'm so comfortable just doing 15 things at one time as opposed to one thing at one time. And if I become like X or Y, then I have to completely commit to that one thing. And then the third piece was really just understanding why I felt like I had to compare myself to other people, and why I felt like, oh, I'm not good enough. And people around me were like, your work is so good, you should put it up, you should share it. And it just never sort of like rung true. So that's really the journey I'm on with becoming a little bit more self-assured as an artist.
So a lot of introspection.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year has been really good in some ways, where you're forced to be at home with your thoughts in your own head, which otherwise sometimes get lost in Bangalore's traffic. So it's nice.
Yeah, I think that is one good thing that I think a lot of people have just had time to sit and think.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
think the
not just get
privileged ones
lost.
like us have the luxury to sort of make big life decisions. And this is partially just one of those things, just being more comfortable with myself, my passion for art, my work. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful in a strange way for the good fortune that I've had to be stuck at home this year.
And on that note, I would like to thank you again, Anushka, so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you so much, Rahi. I hope I was helpful, and I hope that somebody resonates with this and sort of goes on their journey a little bit more self-assured, a little bit more, compelled to just do what they're passionate about. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.